Welcome to Skyler Jarvis Media.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Skyler Jarvis.
What's up, everybody? This is the Skyler Jarvis Show. I'm your host, Skyler, and today we are talking about some internet breaking news about Linkin Park. Now, anybody who knows this band knows that in 2017, we lost one of the greatest hard rock singers of our time, Chester Bennington. He was one of the better ones. He had quite a range. And he could sing, he could sing hard. He could scream. He could do everything. So the band started in 2000, and when we got the news, I remember when I got the news, I was actually at my mama's, just listening to music. You find I would do that a lot coming back from school. But anyway, Mama, or I think I called Mama, and she was like, "Skyler, have you heard what happened to Chester?" And I'm like, "Bennington." She's like, "Yes." She was like, "He committed suicide." And this is right after Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, by the way. Rest in peace, Chris Cornell, as well. So, they have just announced a new female lead singer in Emily Armstrong. They also did a live performance on September 5th, which was Thursday. I guess around 6 o'clock. I found out about it at 7, and so they also announced a new album, and they've put out a new song called The Emptiness Machine. So, fans are obviously torn. Like, none of us were expecting an album out of all of this. I was, I usually love it when they do album countdowns, but I did, when they did the countdown and they trolled everybody, like, I was not expecting an album reveal. I was just kind of expecting them to go on a few tours with a new female vocalist or whatever, because that was what was stirring in the woodwork. That was, that was quite a reveal. And then they revealed it in their live show as well. And they broadcasted it on their YouTube channel. And bands, up-and-coming bands, take this into account. This is how you do a reveal right here for a new vocalist. I mean, you give people a taste of what they're getting into and what they're going to be hearing when these guys go out on tour. They also announced From Zero World Tour. This album is called From Zero, by the way, and the countdown made sense after that because, so whenever they did the reveal or the countdown, I heard of it from the sidelines. I didn't, I wasn't really expecting really much out of Linkin Park, but a countdown started like about a week ago, I think, and then whenever it hit 0, it reset, and people thought Linkin Park was trolling them, but it actually makes sense after the reveal, because it's starting from 0. So I'm gonna talk about the performance right quick, man, because obviously for a new vocalist, they're all in the mindset of this is not a replacement for Chester. Chester cannot be replaced. He was that good. He's one of a kind. His voice was just amazing. So this is them moving on. They deserve to move on. And I think this vocalist, Emily Armstrong, has a lot of attention on her right now. And a lot of people pointed out that she was really nervous. And I think her voice even blew out a few times. But she was nervous. Anybody in her shoes would be nervous. You gotta understand, like, you're singing Chester Bennington songs up with Linkin Park. That has got to be terrifying to a new singer. It's like, I'm doing this right now. So, honestly, I have never watched a concert or been to a concert where I have just been... It took me on an emotional roller coaster, bro. I have never had a concert get me singing and get me pumped and then get me just daggone crying on some songs. When she did Lost, it's a new it was a Linkin Park song that they put out like a year ago. It was from their second album recording sessions. So when she did that, man, it tore me up. And then Numb is another highlight for me. Oh my gosh. Whenever they did Somewhere I Belong and Crawling, you could tell, like, they didn't just pick somebody that could, sing the harder parts and stuff. Like, she can, she's, like I said, she's not a replacement of Chester, but she can sing on Chester's caliber. Obviously, I think they had to change the tune of a lot of songs so she could sing in her range. But what they did, man, it fits. And it might not sound like the Linkin Park we've come to know and love, but it is a new start. And I am so stoked to see what they do. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. Even though I do like her, I really think, she could do with some voice lessons. That way, like, she could control when she goes into the higher pitch, that, she could do it for longer. And, like, because you notice, like, when they did the Catalyst, they her voice blew out on that song. And then I think maybe Numb a little bit, but anyway, I think she's gonna be a good thing. She's gonna be a good singer for that band, but it wouldn't hurt to have some vocal coaching. That way, when she's on these big tours, she can, she's not gonna be blowing her voice out every night, because eventually that's gonna hurt your vocal cords. And I think with the caliber of success that Linkin Park's at, they have the resources, and they can get somebody to kind of help her sing more comfortably for them, and where just like Matt Heafy from Trivium, he you notice on the first, this is all my metal heads, but on those first 5, 6 albums, I think, first 6 albums they did, like he would just sing as hard as he could, or scream as hard as he could, and eventually he blew his voice out, and he had to get vocal coaching from one of the best vocal coaches out there that had done for hard rock singers. Ron Anderson, rest in peace, Ron Anderson. But back to my point, she could do with some vocal lessons. I really would recommend it. And she's a great singer. She did very well under the circumstances. Like, you got a lot of people watching you online on a live stream, and then you got the people in the audience. That has to be terrifying. So shout out to Emily Armstrong for just putting on a good show with this band. And that was a good move. And then they put out an Apple Music interview on the stage where they did the live performance, and that was cool. That is good marketing right there. Bands take notice, man. Bands take notice. If you want to get your stuff out there, that is how you interact with your fans. Especially since said fans didn't think they were going to get any other material out of Linkin Park except for maybe a few unreleased tracks or, remixes or different, like 20th anniversary albums. So that is a hell of a comeback. I'm not gonna front, man. So Chester Bennington, I want to talk about him for a minute. He, I've already said how amazing his vocals were, but he was depressed a lot. There was a lot of things that happened to him. I think he was molested as a kid or something, and that really stuck with him. And if you go back and listen to that last Linkin Park album, that the last one with Chester, One More Light, and you listen the song One More Light, man. You could tell he was begging for somebody to hear him. Him and Chris Cornell would go to each other's concerts. And he had just lost Chris Cornell, and he actually sung at Chris Cornell's funeral. And what's sad is that it came right after Chris, and two of rock's best singers at the time, and Soundgarden was gearing up to put their album out. Linkin Park already had, and then Chester died. Just bam, brought everything to a halt. And then, we all grew up here in Chester, Bennington. I can't tell you like how young I was the first time I heard Hybrid Theory. I mean, that is a great album, and like I listened to it recently, and I haven't listened to Linkin Park in a good minute. I'm not gonna lie, and I go back and listen to Hybrid Theory and Meteora, Minutes to Midnight, and those albums were so good, and Chester was, I think, at his peak then of putting his pain on in music. He was, Crawling was a personal song for him. I mean, there was Points of Authority. Those, that first album, man, you got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of Chester venting on especially those first three albums, and then One More Light. Like he was a good vocalist, and then after Minutes to Midnight, Linkin Park kind of went electronic, and a lot of people don't like those albums. But I mean, honestly, they're not my favorite either. But at the same time, at that time, it proved that this band could do, especially with 1,000 Suns, they could do a lot more than just hard rock. And one of the best songs out of their whole catalog came out of that, and that was the Catalyst off 1,000 Suns. And Chester Bennington proved that he could sing in different, like, he could sing pop, he could sing metal, he could sing hard rock. He could do all of that. And even for a time, he played with Stone Temple Pilot after Scott Weiland died. So, what an honor it must have been for him to play for, or to sing for Stone Temple Pilot and make an EP with him. That must have been, that was one of the bands he grew up hearing, and then he was playing with them. That must have tickled him to death. And then they put The Hunting Party out. I remember hearing that for the first time. Because their last two albums before that had, they were more electronic sounding. So whenever the Hunting Party came out, it was a return to form, a return to the rock metal kind of thing. They started, the new metal thing, and that was one of their best albums. I remember just sitting and listening to it like, this is pretty good. They haven't put anything that good out since Minutes to Midnight. And then when One More Light came out, at first I didn't like it. I just thought it sounded too poppy. Like, I was like, man, you went from a hard rock album to a daggone pop record. Like, really? I didn't understand it at the time, but it fit the music, man. It fit the music that they were doing, and that was Chester's goodbye album. Mama was talking to me during that time, right after Chester died, and she was listening to that album, and she was like, you could tell it was his suicide note. He was talking about a lot of stuff on that album. I bet that was a really personal album for him. And then not even a month later, or 2 months later, he dies. Bam. Yeah, man. We truly lost one of the best that year. One of the best singers in hard rock ever. Rest in peace, man. And here's to this new singer, Emily Armstrong. Keep it going. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes about with this. So, for those of you who don't know, I do community posts on here. And it's basically like me getting feedback from y'all on what you guys think I should talk about on here. Because I'm always looking for things to talk about, and, reasons for people to keep coming back to Skyler Jarvis Media. So, your guys' feedback is very important here. So, drop your ideas down in the comments on what you think I should talk about, or what, if you want to get on the podcast and talk about something, you're more than welcome. So this concludes today's episode. I hope you have enjoyed it. Hope you've been enjoying the podcasts, the vlogs, everything. And I just want to let you guys know how much I appreciate everything. So thank you for the support. Thank you for watching these things. Just thank all of y'all for everything you do. This is Skyler Jarvis signing off.
Ladies and gentlemen, Skyler has left the building. Hey, bro, don't you want to say anything?